We still do 7 NUFC Matters show a week for free. But if you want to help support NUFC Matters, then there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast and video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications bell so you don't miss a single show. If you want to help us financially, then you can join the channel using this button with the membership starting at $1.99 a month. Or you can drop us a donation in the chat using a super sticker. We're also looking for sponsors. If you'd like your brand advertised on the flyers for the show and featured during the ad break, then email john@nufcmatters.com to arrange today.
Just a question of taste with you, well, if you've gone sour, you want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions are get creeping and you go and buy our flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy, I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. Just shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters, the professionals with me, Stu and Mitch. Good evening, lads.
Good evening.
90 minutes of chat about Newcastle United, taking your questions and giving your opinions as well. And we've got a game, of course, to look back on, which was just before the international break, which kicks in again for another couple of weeks. So, yes, Everton and Newcastle played out a draw. Should have been a 1-0 win for Newcastle, really, in layman's terms, missing the penalty, but could have been so much more. Some great creative play, just nobody grabbing the opportunity to put it in the back of the net. I guess the biggest culprit in front of goal was probably Joe Linton. He could have still been playing now, wouldn't have scored. It was just one of those days for him, unfortunately. But a point at Goodison, our last trip to Goodison, as they are getting a brand new shiny stadium. They could also get relegated, of course. We come away with a point from somewhere where we got absolutely tonked last season, 3-0 defeat last season, of course, under different circumstances. So doing the match day live as we did on that new on the new show on Big Up, it was it felt like a defeat, but with a bit of reflection this morning, it's another point. You see the way the results have gone today. We haven't lost a great deal of ground, and we go again after the international break, and 1 defeat in 6, Mitch.
Bit of context always helps, doesn't it? The day after, when you can sit down and look at other results. I think certainly today's results make it hurt less. But at the same, and you know what though, I'd also rather be talking about a game which we dominated, which we should have taken chances, than talking about a game like Southampton that we barely turned up in and didn't make chances. I think there's a lot more positives still to take out of it. We're missing, with a proper cutting edge at centre forward, I think that game would have been very different. And yes, people can point to, this is something we've talked about for 2 seasons now, and it's very frustrating, but Eddie's got a lot of faith in Gordon. And Gordon didn't really let us down yesterday. He maybe he's wanted it too badly, if you ask me. So I think there's a lot more things we can take away from that than I think certainly in the cold light of day today, I feel different than I did last night. Certainly less frustrated, perhaps. But at the same time, you then think, okay, but another 2 points. Look at that league table and where would we be now with the results today? So it's swings and roundabouts. It's a game we lost last season and lost badly. And so you can look at that and say, okay, on last season, that's a move in the right direction. But we need to be looking forward and concentrating on our own game. I think, for me, I can question some of the substitutions perhaps a little bit, but again, Eddie makes the call. That's what he's paid to do, and we're here to support them and back them where we can. Yes, Joe Linton was a little profligate in his efforts, but you could say the same about a couple of others, maybe too. And some of the chances go in the opposite direction. Again, I think we were guilty of giving the ball away at times in dangerous places, and I think that's something we very much need to build on. And the frustrating thing is now, with an international break, we don't have those players around for Eddie to work with for a period of time, and that's going to frustrate Eddie, for no doubt about it.
Stu, your thoughts on yesterday's game on reflection?
I'm conflicted, Steve, because I'm stuck between being a spoiled brat and saying we should wipe the floor with them, and then being what I normally am, is optimistic and positive and thinking, well, you know what, it's a clean sheet away from home, in which you should take in the Premier League every day of the week. We never look like getting beat, but on the flip side of that, did we really ever look like winning? And for me, the first half, the confidence and energy and the belief was lacking. I know we dominated the ball, but as if they didn't have not the desire, but the risk that's needed to go forward and push at the spaces and create the opportunities. And it was more like they were building their own confidence back up to say, like, we don't want another Fulham. We need to win the battles, and they did. You know, if we're using Fulham as a yardstick, it was a huge improvement. But, and I come with a but, and I'll be selfish here, I've stated on just about every week since I put the bet on, I got 400 quid on Newcastle being qualifying for the Champions League this season. But for me, 2 points away from home to Bournemouth, Fulham and Everton's not going to get us Champions League football, whichever way you look at it. And by a distance, Everton are the worst team that we've played this season. Every team we played, Everton are the worst. But if we're being positive, as I said, we've got 2 more points than we have at this stage last season against the same opposition. As we say, you draw your away games, you win your home games. Just our next few home games aren't going to be the easiest, but we're more than capable of doing it. Overall, for me, I thought Everton were there for the taking, and we failed to take it, but it was a much more improved performance. And for me, you've got to take the rough with the smooth. We won away at Wolves, where did we really deserve to win? And we got the points. No, I think the draw was probably a fair result in that game, where this game we probably did deserve to win, and we didn't. So that's how it works up. But dress it up any way you wish. There's still an air of disappointment. That's what I put in the tweet. It's not because we didn't win. Well, it is. It's because we didn't beat an abject Everton team, and we should have really been pushing. You've got a 39-year-old playing at left back. That's not his position. You know, we should have had pace on him, and I think Eddie Howe was sending the message out, naming 2 goalkeepers, and we could have, with a bit more confidence, Newcastle in full stride, I think we would have won that 3 or 4-0, and we would have wiped the floor with them. But we didn't. But they battled, and they've come out of it without getting beat, and it could have easily have been a win. And for any knacker who's blaming Anthony Gordon on social media, really, they need to give the head a shake, or put the phone down, put the laptop down, whatever they use to get on there. The guy, every time he got the ball, was kicked from pillar to post, much to the delight of the home crowd. And he never reacted once, and he kept coming back for more, and he never stopped running. And he's not a natural striker, but he's playing a role out of his position for the betterment of the team, because he's been asked to. And for that, he deserves all our support. And on a different day, he puts the ball the other direction. But had he done that, and everyone knows that's old T-Rex has written on his bottle which side penalty takers kick the ball. He kicked it that way last week. He's done it before. So had he kicked it that way and picked for dive that way, then he would have got penalties for that. He had the gonads to stand up and take the penalty. It was, he could have struck it better. There was a long delay beforehand, etc. Could this have been where Trippier picked the ball up and then passed it to him and let him gather his thoughts? We don't know. But at the end of the day, had he rolled it in the other corner like Shaw did against Wimbledon, he's the hero. And I loved his tweet today where he said he'll come back for more. He'll never hide, and that's what we want playing for our team. The guy plays with his heart on his sleeve, and for us, he's fantastic, and he's only going to get better. So overall disappointment we didn't win, but there was plenty of things to like about how we played, even if it took maybe them scoring their disallowed goal for us to like, hang on, we should even be considering getting beat up this lot, and then we picked it up a bit. But a point's a point, and not what we all wanted, but at the end of the day, it's what we've got, and we move on to the next game.
2-0 to Spurs. James Maddison overlooked by England again with a rather fortuitous deflection. So that's Brighton 0, Spurs 2 in the last game of the weekend before the international break. We've talked about the penalty, and we've talked about the result. From what I've got on social media, Mitch, I just put a thing out saying, the failure to buy another striker over the last couple of transfer windows is ultimately still affecting us, and it affected us again yesterday because, no matter what you say, without Isak and without Wilson, Newcastle don't have a recognised striker. Anthony Gordon is not a recognised striker. He's not a 20-goal striker. And some people, and I've got to be honest, for the first time in a while on X, it was quite civilised, the discussions that I had with people, and I tend to just post something and don't bother looking at the responses. But the responses were quite interesting, and I have talked about Osula on this show probably all week. Would he get a run out against Wimbledon? What did we think of him against Wimbledon? Will he start getting a little bit of a chance against opposition, maybe his lower league opposition, in the Premier League? But the answer was no yesterday. It didn't feature again yesterday. We stuck with Gordon up front. Maybe that was more down to the fact that they wouldn't want to sub McGoodison, really for his own mental, mental side of things. You know what I mean? He wouldn't want to get the stick and the crowd cheering, especially after missing the penalty. But going off tangent a little bit, I was basically saying that we should have had another striker signed over the last couple of seasons, and we've suffered when Wilson and Isak have both been out, and both been out at the same time on numerous occasions. And some people were saying, well, what striker would you buy to bring in to sit on the bench? Who's going to come and sit on the bench? And my argument is, if you're going to be a good team, you need to have cover in all these positions. So we need 4 strikers ultimately at the club. That's what we need. Is Osula the answer? From what I saw against Wimbledon, I saw it live. I was there. The kid's got ability. There's no doubt about it. But he's very raw. He's not somebody who could come on, I don't think, at this moment in time and change a game in the Premier League. If Lady Luck's on his side and he's a bit fortuitous and he's got an opportunity and he's in the 6-yard box and he tucks it away, yeah. But we've seen so many players over the years at Newcastle who've been thrown in at the deep end, who've missed that inevitable first chance, which has cost Newcastle a point or 3 points or whatever, and they've never recovered from it. So I think Eddie Howe's doing the right thing with him, but I don't think Osula is going to be the answer long term, possibly, but short term, no. And that's what I meant. I do think it's cost us, by not having an adequate replacement. It did last season, and it's doing so again, Mitch.
Did Osula show enough against Wimbledon to say, yes, we could stick him in at the deep end against Everton? And the answer for me is no. But I also agree with the argument about who could we get, knowing fine well they were coming in as third choice striker. That was a very, very difficult, situation to sort out. Nobody's going to come in knowing that choice number 3 when everybody's fit.
Does anybody sign anybody and go, you're coming in as choice number 3? Nobody does that. If you sign somebody in the summer,
they're also aware of the situation that when everybody's fit, we've got 2 focal point number 9s, and they're the ones you've got to shift to get into the queue. Yes, they both carry injuries on quite a lot of occasions.
Yeah, that's my point. They're both made of fiberglass.
But for me, Osula had his chance against Wimbledon to grasp the nettle, and like many players who played against Wimbledon, didn't do enough, didn't show enough hunger for me to say, right, let's put them in. And the problem I have with playing Gordon at central striker is he changes the way we play. He's not a classical focal point striker. He drops deep, he comes away. Yes, that gives different questions for the centre-back stance, but it still is difficult for us seemingly to adapt to that. It's frustrating as it is. It boils down to relying on Callum Wilson as our backup, knowing fine well what his injury record is, if you ask me. But and it would have been difficult to sign, I think, anybody of a greater calibre, knowing where we're at in terms of how that squad makeup is, if everybody was fit. And yes, that's a big if, but we don't have a crystal ball. You can't just say, yes, if you talk to the sports medicine guys, the history of injury is the best predictor for future injury. Genuinely is. All the data in every sport tells you that. But then again, we brought somebody in the summer who's hopefully going to start to rectify that. But his arse has barely touched his seat, so there's hardly really any finger poking going on there at the minute, or there shouldn't be. It frustrates yesterday because had we had Isaac or Wilson available, I've got no doubt that we'd have come away with 3 points. But that's, again, on whoever has made the decision that running with Isaac, Wilson and Gordon as number 3, that's where the decision's in error. But, we can cry about it with hindsight. Hindsight makes you a bloody genius. You can talk about what ifs as much as we like. That's what we've got until January. So we've got to make it work.
What do you think, Stu? I mean, I'm just looking at, there's been suggestions by people in the chat, of course, as always. But I mean, you're looking at the striker that Villa's got to bring on, who's banging the goals in. Didn't get one today. But you've also got Jonathan David, who got linked with Newcastle in the summer. We could have brought somebody else in, but there's also the point by Christabel who says, Lewis Miley, was he ready for the Premier League? Probably not, but we put him in and he did well. So there is a flip side to it, and that's what I mean. It was quite a level-headed debate on X with people, but like Mitch says, we've got to get on with it. This is the cards we've been dealt until January.
Well, there's a striker score today, Steve, that you may have been very fond of, that would have played that, and I think would have, because he loved the area, he loved being in Newcastle, would have been happy to be that third striker. There was one yesterday, a young lad that left Man City, scored 3 or 4 already in the league, at Ipswich, Liam Delap. I think he could have been sold the idea, look, you will come in at number 3 initially, but you can learn from these 2, and we're going to bring you on very, very quickly. And if they want to be blunt in a transfer discussion, you've seen their injury record, you're going to get a lot more games than what you might actually anticipate. But we can all be directors of football, we can all be this, that and the other. We know transfers aren't easy. Just Newcastle United seem to make them more difficult than what they actually could be. But in the grand scheme of things, when if you're a striker worth your salt, and if you're a striker, you've got to live with confidence. You've got to have so much belief in yourself. And unless you're Haaland, you're going to be number 2 to Isaac. So then you've got the Callum Wilson conundrum. Can I oust him? Well, most of the season, yes, because he's not fit. He's injured. But when he is playing, his goals per minute ratio is as good as anyone's, taking Haaland out of it. So it's easy for us sitting here from the cheap seats, throwing shots and saying, you should do this, you should do that. But it's not as easy as it should be. I agree with Gary V, who put a comment on there. For me, the biggest oversight we've had since the takeover is we've never upgraded the right wing position. Every other position's had an upgrade except that. And that, for me, it's been drastic to say criminal, but it's an oversight that really, really needs to be addressed, because we're still playing with the same people. And we all witnessed yesterday, Miggy came on and he looked sharp in comparison to what Murphy had. We know both of them, they play one decent game in 4 or 5, they're willing runners, etc. But if we do have true aspirations, which I believe the club does have, to finish really high in the league, that's a position that they need to have nailed down come early weeks of January. And the fact that what has been 5 windows since the takeover happened, 3 years tomorrow, that position's never been tinkered with or improved, who gets the blame for that? You can't just blame Ashworth. You certainly can't blame Mitchell. Eddie Howe may be too loyal. I like this person, I like that person. But then you've got the thing, Miggy doesn't want to leave. He's on his contract. We can't make him leave. Then you've got the PSR issue. So there's loads of things that get thrown into it. But Osula, if you're spending 15 million of an extra 5, would have got us Liam Delap. But how do we know Liam Delap would have scored the goals? Well, Ipswich didn't. They just took a risk because they needed to. And he banged them in for them. Same could be said for Osula as well. Unless you play him, you're not going to know if he's capable of scoring. The little bits that we've seen, yes, there's work there, but how long is he going to stay his potential? You know, he's 21-year-old. Do we keep him until he's 25 and say, right, you might be ready for the odd subs position? And if you're naming 2 keepers and he's your forward backup and the game was crying out for a goal and you don't put him on, then that's got to be questioned as well. You know, how's he going to feel? He had his first run out. But you know what? The way we had played so far this season, even if Isak was playing, would you have got the service? I think there'd be no doubt you'd slot the penalty away. But would you get the service? And that's the thing. Maybe what we're trying to do is getting back into the square pegs and round holes. And I think, and again, just my opinion, looking at the bigger picture, I think come the Brighton game, Isak's fit, he starts, and I think he'll rest Harvey Barnes and put Gordon back on the left and give Murphy another shot on the right. And they can say to Miggy, well, you've been travelling with Paraguay, so we're going to start Murphy. And then Barnes will come on and be an impact player, because I think at our best 11 with everyone fit, that's how the team would be. But Harvey Barnes has shown, for me, maybe I'm being too critical or overcritical or harsh, for the last 2 or 3 games when he's been starting, he hasn't give it, but when he hasn't give the full output. But when he comes on for the last 30 minutes or so, he's a game changer. And that's just the type of people when you come off the bench, if we are going to qualify for the Champions League.
Stu, you've nailed my frustration with Barnes. If you look at his stats starting the game versus coming off as an impact sub, it's night and day. Night and day. And I don't know how a player can be like that. You know,
he's running against a tyrant defence.
Far more contributions to the game coming off the bench as an impact sub than he does when he starts a game.
The thing is, Mitch, with the way Eddie Howe wants especially these wide men, they've got to be all-purpose players, haven't they? They've got to be able to get back and help the left back out if it's the left wing position. And to be fair, I thought Hall had another great game following on from his game at Man City. And Dan Burn, I think the 2 of them didn't get enough credit in all the aftermath of last night. I thought both of them had really good games. But Barnes you've got to look at his positives. What's he good at? He's good at running at players, going one way, then the other. Yes, we all know he prefers to cut in. And everyone says, you know, he's going to cut in. But unlike Miggy, he can go the other way. And I know Miggy did one cross with his marshmallow foot with his right foot yesterday, and it took everyone by surprise. But we're talking over a period of time. Barnes will come on when we need him, when we are either chasing the game, you know what I mean? If we're 1 down or if we're drawn, and he can come on and run with power, with pace at defence. That's what he's very, very good at. What he's not very good at is chasing back. And some people aren't built for it. Gordon is, to be fair, on the right. Miggy's built for going up and down the line. But Barnes isn't in his job or his strong point. And if you take that away from him by saying you've got to come back and cover here, then he's not as effective in his best position. And that's why, personally, I think he's better to be an impact sub. And that's with the flexibility of Gordon, who can play anywhere along the front line. You could bring Barnes on and keep Gordon on the pitch at the same time. You know, so hopefully after this next international break, even if Wilson's fit, he's not going to be fit enough to start anyway. You know, so Isak will, because he's already match fit. He's had a knock, hasn't he? So I reckon they'll start Barnes on the bench, and that will give us what we've lacked last season, but what we had at the start when we picked up the points. We had game changers coming off the bench. But overall, Osula, why is he on the bench if he's not going to get a chance? Why pick him in the first place? Because that, for me, and I'm not criticising Eddie Howe, I'd be the last person to criticise Eddie Howe, But that's the position he's sitting on that bench for. That game was crying out for someone. Go on, son, go and prove it, because we're never going to get beat off them. So worst case would have happened by playing him, we would have got a draw anyway. So just my opinion.
Lee Jones says, do you think Eddie Howe got the subs right yesterday, as we seemed to lose control of the game when Barnes and Tonali went off? And would you have put Osula on for the last 15 minutes? If you were manager, Mitch, would you have put Osula on? And did he get the subs right? I mean, for me, Tonali was flagging. I think Joe Linton was flagging. He put himself about. He might have missed a whole host of chances, but tiredness was definitely creeping in.
I think we did lose a little bit of control of the game when the subs were made. And as Stu says, how does Osula feel not being used when we needed a focal point striker, and that's what he purportedly is? But I think he's paying for a lacklustre performance against Wimbledon.
What about you, Stu?
You do that though, isn't it? It's easy to say, well, you're the new one. I don't think the substitutes were bad, because I don't think Longstaff had a bad game. I don't think Miggy had a bad game when he came on. You know, it's just like, would you have taken Murphy off earlier and kept Barnes on? But that, for me, was more out of hope than what they were actually watching, because Barnes didn't have a good game, and we'll applaud him and wax lyrical about him when he sticks him in the corner from 25 yards. But realistically, he's not going to do that every game. But yesterday, although the desire was there and the effort was there, the end product wasn't there. And that game needed someone. Do you know what they needed to bring on for Harvey Barnes? They needed to bring Harvey Barnes on for Harvey Barnes, and that would have won us the game. But that then goes down to the squad depth. And I still think Osula, we could have given him 10, 15 minutes. I don't see what damage it would have done. It wouldn't have lost us the game by sticking him on, but it might have just won it. But again, as we said last week, Eddie Howe watches them day in, day out, and he knows who he can trust and who's going to give him it. And you'll get it right a lot more times than you'll get it wrong.
Yep, interesting stuff. Lots of people talking about it. Lots of people want to talk about different subjects as well. Alan Little, we'll go with yours first. He says, 3 years into the takeover, lads, where do you think we are on the schedule of sorts? Or has PSR set us back a few years? The Premier League's getting like the Scottish Premier League, City, Arsenal and Liverpool. Have we moved on that much since the amazing first full season under Eddie? Have other teams sussed us out totally in the way we play? I'd say yes, but last week against Manchester City restored my faith. Where are we at, Mitch, is the question.
We've talked about this before. I think if you rearranged our seasons, you'd be talking about a steady progression and isn't as great and we're all going forward. I think it shows massively how much we overperformed to take that squad into the Champions League, and then how much was suffered with the injuries because of lack of squad depth last season. Have we moved on? Yes, I think we're a long way away. Certainly mentally, I think, as a squad and as a club. Does PSR hold us back? Yes, of course it does. If you can't just drop 250 million into a transfer window, left, right and centre, of course. Have we planned it correctly? But the scramble in the summer would suggest that we missed a trick somewhere. Are rules holding us back? Absolutely they are. You don't have a set of rules known colloquially as the Newcastle Amendments if they're not designed to hold Newcastle United back. It's that clear. You know, and so that is one of the frustrations that we're dealing with. But as ever, I still have confidence that PIF will find a way one way or the other. But I do feel like this season is a key season going forward. That we've got to show further progression from where we were 2 seasons ago. Are we different? Yes, I think different in mentality. I even think we'd have lost that game last season probably. Certain things have been restored. Well, yeah, we did, but equally on that evening, I could see us last season crumbling a little bit in the last 10 minutes.
1-0 away.
Yeah, you know, whereas this season, I think, were we ever really scrambling? No, I don't think so. You know, that's, I think, why we're all frustrated. We should have put that game away. But no doubt we're hindered by certain things. But if you rearrange the seasons so it shows a steady progression, I think a lot more people would be a lot more comfortable. Is the Premier League turning into the SPL? Not quite as bad. However, there are a number of clubs who are, what are they describing themselves at the minute? Historic something or other was the phrase I saw someone using recently. Basically saying, this is about us and our little fiefdom and nobody else can come and join the party. That's clear that that's what they want, but it's not going to happen long term, in my opinion.
So where are we at, Stu? What would you say? You seem to be nodding along with most of what Mitch said.
Yeah, I normally do, to be fair. He speaks a lot of sense most of the time. Well, he didn't that much late on Friday night, but prior to that...
Not really, no.
Did I hear he had a lie in as well at some point?
Right, well, he missed the match yesterday evening, so he got
penman. Dear me, how he got penmaned.
I got penmaned. I had an old man's nap after work, and next thing I knew, the match had started.
To be fair, you got up for work. I wouldn't have been managing work that Saturday morning. So credit to you for doing that. You know what? Anyhow, we all watch his press conferences, right? And he's Mr. Creosote for sitting on the fence, isn't he? But he let his mask slip, I thought, on Friday when you could sense the frustration in when he started talking about the rules, when he was quizzed about how the club had advanced. And I know Mitch said at the start, if we look at the 3 years that we've had of Eddie Howe and we mix them up, there's been a gradual progression. But then you get the bedwetters going, oh, no, but we're regressing. But we know why, because we're not allowed to progress. We're being prohibited to progress in the way that we would like to. But between us, well, not individually, us three here on this panel, for the best part of half a century, we're watching Newcastle United. And that season, the first full season of Eddie Howe, had to be in the top 5 of all the seasons that we've watched. You know what I mean? So we've had that memory. And then we're back in the Champions League for the first time in 20 years. We've had that. These players, that manager give us that. Where the frustration comes is that we haven't been able to enhance on that and improve on that. Not because they don't want to, not because the owners don't want to give the money to do it. It's the other certain few have twisted the rules to stop us. And this is a thing where I think our tanks should be pointed at. It shouldn't be on, Dan Burns not good enough, because Dan Burns probably been our player of the season so far for consistency. And it shouldn't be on that person. We shouldn't be looking at individual players, because even when they're not playing well, they are giving their all. You don't see any of them giving up or stop chasing back or whatever. It may be due to a lack of ability or lack of awareness or whatever, but it's not commitment to the cause. And that's something that comes from the manager and his coaching staff. The camaraderie they've got, they'll fight together. What we need to advance is better players fighting together. And although Tonali yesterday made a couple of passes that went astray, he's improving game on game. And you've got him improving. Bruno's getting back to somewhere near his best. Joe Linton, again, a couple of stray passes, but that'll get fixed. He was everywhere. He was my man of the match yesterday, Joe Linton. You've got a midfield there that really can start to dominate games. And once it all clicks, remember, we're still missing Botman, and we shouldn't underestimate if you look at the results prior to his first injury, and then since then, last season, because we started last season well, up until when he was injured. He'll come back, and they'll give him enough time to come back fully fit. We all know that they're going to spend money in January. But for me, I'll go back. If we have a right winger that's as equal to Gordon, or has the potential to get up to where Gordon was or is now, like Gordon when we signed him, get someone like that, we could finish the season flying. And there's no reason why we can't. And the fact that we're not in Europe and they've got all these extra games for the teams that are in Europe, if we can hang in there, our team is getting fitter. The performances are improving because of that. And we can genuinely finish the season a lot higher. And I'll repeat, as I say every week, as long as we avoid major injuries to key players, there's no reason why we can't finish the Champions League. But what we can't have is more, and I'll call it a hiccups like last night, because we got beat 3-0 last season. we got a point. We drew at Wolves last season. We got 3 points this season. Yes, we lost at Fulham, but we got a point at home to Man City. We're 2 points ahead of where we were this time last year against the same opposition. Now we've got the key games coming up. We've got the Brighton at home. We've got Chelsea away, Arsenal at home. And if we can get 7 points, even 5 points from those 3 games, we're still going to be in a stronger position. And we can all act like spoiled brats. We all do. You know, we're all, whether you're at the game or you're watching on TV, you're in the bar with your mates. Oh, man. You know, we start shouting at the screen or shouting at the pitch. That's because we want the best. And that's what makes us the best fans in the league, because we want the best. And as long as they're giving the best, we'll give them our best. So I think last night, Steve, that's why you didn't get as much traction as you normally would have, like negative traction, because even the ones who want to criticise can't fault the effort that they had, the domination they had of the ball. What they can only fault is that we didn't execute the final plan. But that again goes back to the original point of this question. We don't have a striker fit. We don't have a right winger capable of producing on a consistent basis. And that's where we are. And we have to accept that, but in the knowledge that we will get better. We will improve. And we are going to improve. So put it by the way, we get Brighton 1 and we're in a better position. Look at Aston Villa. They had a mighty game against Bayern Munich. And they failed to beat a very poor Man United team today. And that's the sort of effect Europe can have on teams. And with as much as we point our fingers at Arsenal and Man City, they're too far ahead of us at the moment. We'll catch them. It'll take a long time, but we will catch them. There's no doubt about it. But the Aston Villas are the teams that we need to be getting our heads in front. Chelsea drew at Forest today. They drew at home to Forest today. They've dropped 2 points. You know what I mean? So it's all happening. We drew away from home. Those other two I've just mentioned drew at home against teams that they should beat. And I would imagine their fans aren't having the fallout that some of our fans do. And that's where the reality check has to come in. Was it the ideal result? Yes or no? Should Osula? Yes. I think 90% of the fans would say we should have given 10 minutes. But we didn't. And if my auntie had something else, should be my uncle. We all know the answer to that. But
Minteh's just scored for Brighton against Spurs. Back post, tucked it in. Nice little finish. 2-1. 2-1.
What we do for him, I'm pleased for him.
2 meltdown.
No, but he's scored goals anyway. And you're right, Mitch. That'll be people now saying, oh, if we'd kept him, he's right wing, you would have scored that goal yesterday. You know, there's too many people playing this game on FIFA. And ultimately, we just need to go there and say, we are in a position now as strong as we have been, even though without injuries, but frightfully, we're 2 or 3 injuries away from another crisis. And that's not Eddie Howe's fault. That's not the players' fault. That comes from the recruitment team and the rules that were put against them. Because if anyone doubts that these owners are still fully behind us, which I don't think we should go into talking, Steve, but the things that us three and Steve Hasty have been swapping stories over the last week or so on WhatsApp, there's no doubt in my mind at all that these people who own our club want the very best and won't rest until they give us the very best. But what they won't do is break rules to do it. And that'll make it more sweeter when it happens. Trust us, they want it as much as we do.
Okay, lots of people asking about the penalty. Let's just finish this once and for all before we go to the break. Chris said, do you think there should have been someone else taking the penalty? Do you think there was too much pressure on Anthony Gordon to take it? Paul Patterson said, why did Gordon take the penalty? The baggage with the fixture should have suggested that Shaw, who'd scored midweek, of course, was the obvious choice. Thoughts on that, Mitch? I mean, you know, it was a pressure penalty.
And if he took it away, everybody would be lauding him for having balls the size of space on us. Again, in hindsight, it is really the clever decision to say take it off. But at the time, he has balls the size of space off us, the hoppers, to pick that bloody ball up and take that penalty. And I'm not going to criticise someone for that.
Look at it the other way. Turn it around. Imagine they did take the penalty off him. He's the penalty taker. How would he feel then?
Yeah.
And you know what? His penalty was better than Shaw's. It's just that Shaw wrong-footed the keeper.
I think he changed his mind in his run-up. I think he worked out that Pickford had guessed right. And he tried. That's why he pulled it towards the middle and Pickford saves it with his knees. And I think he changed his mind in the run-up, which is what they say he should never do, taking a penalty. But, again, that makes me a genius. Hindsight, wonderful. Makes us all clever. But no, I'm never going to criticise him for taking a penalty in that situation. I think that absolutely... I've even seen in two separate places, two separate people suggesting that Gordon deliberately threw the chance. And I think that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard anybody say. I really nearly seriously lost my shit with a couple of people over that. I've not bit and I won't bite. But to see our own fans saying something like that just beggars belief. I will not criticise him. He worked super hard, tried so hard, even to the point where his comments on Twitter today, you can see the lads, wanted it badly, and I don't think that's a bad thing at all.
Yeah. Okay. Lots of people still going to comment about that tonight. It seems to be 50-50 on whether people think, he should have took it or whether he shouldn't. Gordon is our penalty taker on the day. He had every right to take it. Says Gary. Jano says, I think Pickford is off the line before the ball's kicked, and it should have been retaken. It was an interesting little conversation between Pickford, Graham Jones, and Anthony Gordon on the Sky cameras as the game had finished, and they were clearly talking about it. And T-Tank says, I don't blame Gordon, but it wasn't for him to take. He hasn't had a good game yet against Everton for me. Bollocks about the story about Gordon. Viva Vendetta says, nobody with a brain blames Gordon for missing the penalty. We shouldn't need a penalty to beat Everton if we've got genuine European ambitions. Trolls just says, how subs weren't good enough. Pickford died before Gordon hit the ball. I think you're right, Mitch. I think Gordon changed his mind on the run-up. Just move on, says Bill. And Everton play like the away side. They are bad, and we should be beating teams like them, says Derek. And Stephen, just before we go to the break, says, Mitch, there are so-called fans using a Newcastle logo as a cover, pretending they're anything but Tune supporters. And I think we've known that for many, many years. Okay, we'll have a quick break. We'll be back after this. If you're watching on Twitter, please jump onto YouTube, hit the subscribe button. NUFC Matters, we do 7 shows a week.
A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. Their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102 or email info@mrvickies.co.uk. Thanks to our NUFC Matters fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. All excursions included, 3-star plus quality hotels, no interchanges, a 2-crew driver and courier. It's a local family company, and you can find them at www.unitedgrouptravel.com or telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you want to help support the channel, hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up under the video. That's the like button. It does help us grow. And click the share button. Help share to your social media. If you want to join the channel for as little as $1.99 a month, then hit the join button under this video today. We also help the food bank on this channel. Visit nufcfansfoodbank.co.uk. It takes you to the matchday bucket where you can donate some money virtually. Some events for your diary in aid of Dementia Matters. The Long Sands will be reforming and be supported by Lilac Lane and the Chris Norris Band at the Cluny in Newcastle on Saturday, January the 4th, 2025. Tickets are £15 pre-sale from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 10th of January 2025. Tickets available from newcastlelegends.com or from Woucher. And an evening with the entertainers takes place on the 24th of January 2025. Telephone the box office 0844 249 1000 or visit the website tynetheatreandoperahouse.uk. And the Magpie Lounge at Gateshead Leisure Centre is now open. 7 tokens for £99. Joe Allen will be hosting tokens with Lee Clark, John Anderson, Steve Howie, Darren Peacock, Supermac, Steve Watson, John Beresford, all between the dates of January and July. £99 for 7 tokens, newcastlelegends.com. And don't forget, you can subscribe to our NUFC Matters fanzine, £20 for 4 issues, with all proceeds going to Dementia Matters. If you live overseas, it is £50 for 4 issues. To order now, go to newcastlelegends.com.
And it's the same website for Will Scott's new book, The Entertainers. We seem to have stopped around about the 40 mark. So if anybody is interested in buying this, we are trying to raise some more money for Dementia Matters with this. $13.99, newcastlelegends.com. Comes out the 30th of November. This is a cracking book, a must-have for Christmas. So get yourself to the website, newcastlelegends.com, $13.99 plus postage. Stephen Kennedy, happy birthday to you tonight, mate. I wish you happy birthday. Yeah, happy birthday to him. And he said, we were all looking forward to Barnes and Tonali's returns. They were like new signings. Coming towards a quarter of a way through, what's your thoughts, Mitch, on the 2 players?
Tell him to be happy on his birthday.
Oh, you're on mute, Mitch.
I'm on mute, sorry. What's the thought about Tonali? I think you slotted it in all right. Tonali, for me, is guilty of one thing, giving the ball away in dangerous positions sometimes. But maybe that's a reflection on how he likes to play, and we have to adjust our midfield and defence to get used to that. Because for me, it's worth having him in the side, because I think he brings an extra dimension at the other end of the pitch when he's on his game.
2-2 Spurs, 2-2 Spurs Brighton. Great goal up by Jorginho. So 2-2. Oh. Spurs look completely different. Sorry, Mitch.
No, it's fine. It's fine. So yeah, for me, he's only going to get better, and the team's only going to get better with him in it the more he plays. He's a quality player. That's very, very clear. That year out must have been very, very hard, mentally, and also physically getting back to speed. I think he's probably got more in the tank, and I think we're yet to see more of that. And I'm all for it. I'm here for it. And in terms of what we were saying there about Byrne coming out to cover Hall's position, again, I don't have a problem with Hall. I do think that he panic passes sometimes. Sometimes the ball's a little bit of a hot potato. His choices when he's passing the ball are sometimes to be questioned. But then you've got to remember he's still only 19 as well. And there's a lot more to come from him.
I'll give my opinion, and it's pretty similar to Mitch's. I do think that Barnes is a super sub, and he's certainly, the stats back that up. I love him as a player, though. When he comes on for that last half hour, it just gives you that big lift. I get why Howe's tried to play them. People were clamouring for it, but we've also got nobody up front, and they're using Miggy, I guess, as a kind of, and Murphy as they've got to use them sparingly. I think Howe probably has last season in mind with injuries, and the potential of, Isaac and Wilson maybe being out a bit longer is probably on his mind as well. We don't seem to be keen on rushing Wilson back, which seems really strange. But I guess on the flip side, they're clearly just thinking if he has a breakdown, then he's going to be out for the rest of the season, and we can't afford to bring a new striker in. That must be going through their mind. But yeah, look, Barnes for me, impact player at best, scores goals, and will clearly get us 10 goals a season if he stays fit. I've been impressed with Tonali. I really do like him. I think that 3 will just get better and better and better. I think that they're big and strong, and they will worry a lot of teams. Bruno, Joe Linton, and Tonali all have that knack of being aggressive and contemporate at times. Joe Linton, you know, is much better on the left. I think there's no doubt about that for me. We certainly have something when he's playing left, and I think he was ably supported by Lewis Hall yesterday. Again, third week in a row that Hall for me was probably my man of the match. I thought he was superb again yesterday. But Tonali, love him. Think he's a good player, and I think he'll get better. I really do. I think those three will work together in midfield. It was the big question last season before he got suspended was, can these three play together? I think the answer we've seen since Tonali has come back now from his suspension is yes, they can. But we need them all to click, and we need them to click with a striker up front who can score goals. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on it. Stu, what about you?
I got to agree. I think Tonali will only get better, and we know that we bought potential. We know, with maybe the odd exception, Zola, that Italians take a longer time to progress because their game is a lot more pedestrian, I suppose, and the Premier League is more high octane. But he's a willing player, and he's got an abundance of talent, and I think, come the end of the season, he'd be one of our star players on a consistent basis. I've got no worries about Tonali improving. And I say that, and I don't think he's had a bad game since he's come back. He's not been outstanding man of the match, but he's shown he's got the quality. And the more he gets used to playing with Bruno, the more he gets used to playing with a regular centre-half pairing, which we seem to have at the moment due to the injuries, and a regular right back. Because when you see the Bruno triangle with Trippier and Tonali, the way they passed the ball about, and that's what was needed, because the first half, for all the possession we had, the lack of attacking intent wasn't there, but they started fizzing the ball about a lot quicker in the second half, and it caused a lot more problems. And Tonali's capable, and he's capable of getting the ball in difficult positions and retaining it. But I don't think we should ever knock a player for trying to progress the team forward and giving the ball away, because that's what we needed yesterday. And when they come off, it's fantastic, and he'll learn to cut the errors out, and he'll learn to understand the runs that his teammates will make, or shall we say the limitations of some of his teammates he's got currently. He is a top player, and he's not the only one we've got. And sometimes we have to start counting being blessed with the players we've got and knowing that we will add to them. Where we've been let down is the transfer windows, the last two, the 2024 transfer windows, January and well, the summer one is an absolute joke. And that shouldn't be on Tonali, that shouldn't be on Bruno, that shouldn't be on any of the players. So we have to accept Tonali's had mentally, he hasn't had a year out injured, he's had a mentally tough year. And I know you get people say, well, it's his own fault. Irrespective, he's still had a mentally tough year. He's now seems to enjoy he's playing his football again. His match fitness is getting better. His confidence is getting more, and he seems to be integrating into the group a lot better as well than what he was when he first got here last year. So I'm not going to say it's a blessing in disguise, because had he stayed being available all last season, I'm quite sure we would have qualified for Europe. But we're in a position now where we can sit back. He knows he's got to repay us, and thankfully he's capable of doing that. With Barnes, I already stated, I think Barnes was bought because we didn't get Maddison, and they need to get another player with attacking intent. And for all his good, he's our top scorer, and that's a worry considering the games we've played and the lack of goals that we've actually had. But Barnes, his strength is going forward, and it is running at tighter in defences. And I think, just to repeat what I said maybe 20 minutes ago, once we've got a fully fit squad, or if we ever get a fully fit squad, he will be the first cab off the rank when it comes to substitutions, because I know players don't like that phrase, they're a game changer, but he genuinely is. But the thing is, he's a
3-2 Brighton.
Yeah, excellent. That game
well,
5, you know.
Welbeck with a goal from another right wing cross from Minteh. 2 assists and a goal from Minteh.
Here we go. Might as well get the plastic sheet on the bed tonight. Eh? It's gonna get wet. They'll all be out, but it's gonna happen. He's a good player. That's why we signed him in the first place. But irrespective of that, we made 500% profit on him. And if it's in an ideal situation, we wouldn't have had to sell him. But even if we kept him, I don't think he would have started many games this season to date now anyway, because the way that Eddie Howe integrates the players into the starting 11. We've seen it with Bruno, we've seen it with Botman, and for sure, Minteh at home, running at people for Brighton, great, but he does go missing, and I'm not going to criticise the lad, even though that sounds like I just have. He's gone, and we'll have to get over it. I'm still more thinking, had we had Chris Wood yesterday, we would have won. But who would people rather have, Chris Wood or Minteh in the team? Getting back to Barnes and Tonali. Tonali for me he's a cut above any of his competitors in that midfield. If we say Bruno's a starter, for me Tonali's the next name in that midfield. So it's them two plus another, and they'll get the formation right. They'll get more stable and they'll get better, because Bruno is getting better. We all had, except Fulham away was probably his worst game, but he had a decent game against Man City, and he looked put the yards in and dictate again yesterday. So it's good. We're on a upward curve, just not where we'd want to be. But it's one of those, Steve, had Gordon scored that penalty or he shot that he blazed over the bar, if he rolled that into the corner, then it's a different story. You know, we were sitting, I think we would have been 4th had that happened, going into the international break. So all's not lost, but we could have gained more. But as I go back to the very beginning, we're still 2 points better off than where we were against the same teams this time last year. And that 2 points, one of those would have got us in Europe this season.
Destiny and Doggy sticks Minteh on his backside, something which I think is born out of frustration, takes the yellow card. But Minteh again was away down that right-hand side, looking to cause more damage. Would Calvert-Lewin not be worth a look in January? He'd be decent in a better team. And I think we've discussed that plenty on here, Waldo. The answer we've all given is, yeah, but it's another injury-prone striker. He's very like Wilson, injury record like Wilson. But when he plays, when he's fit and when he plays, he scores goals. There's no doubt about it. I mean, he saw him yesterday.
Wilson's a better player. Wilson is a better
you know, he is a dangerous player, Calvert-Lewin, and there's no doubt about it. Regardless of how good Minteh is, I'm not bothered. He's not playing for us, says Gary. And Andrew Davies says there'll be a buyback on Minteh, but I don't think Newcastle would be looking to buy back Minteh anyway. You know, listen, we did a deal on a player that never played for us, and it was a good deal, and we've just got to accept that. Thanks to Ian McKenna for gifting 10 NUFC Matter memberships to people in the chat. That's very good of you, mate, to do that, and much appreciated. I'm sure whoever got the memberships will be over the moon. Okay, there was a lot of questions came in, of course, on Friday about relocation. I'm not going to ask Mitch again, because Mitch and I discussed that with his dad, you know, quite a lot on Friday night. But Stu hasn't had his chance to comment on all of this talk this week. John Askew said, if a decision is made to relocate the ground, there's every chance of the council and or pressure group shenanigans, which might delay the project for years, i.e. not in my backyard campaigners, I guess is what you're talking about. He says, with this in mind, do you think the club would be right to consider locations away from the city centre, such as the land near the racecourse or the airport? It might not be ideal, but sometimes needs must. What's your thoughts on the whole, you know, the question that John's given, but just on everything you've heard, Stu, because I know you may or may not have had time to catch up with your amigos with your socialising this weekend. But what's your thoughts on all of that?
I watched it on Saturday morning when Mitch was up.
Lee Jones also says, even lads, with so much talk around the stadium, relocation, etc., would you relocate or possibly completely build St James's Park, which could take years?
Well, it depends what people want, and unfortunately, if we're nostalgic and everything else, we stay at St James Park, and that would be the idyllic answer, but it's not how the real world is, and you're not going to get everything you want. So the way the rules are currently, the only way we're going to get a successful team, I think it's inevitable that will change. And I know you're talking about the NIMBYs and that, Steve, right? but they've got one of these Leazes Park people on the fans advisory board. It's strategic.
Marion Williams, yeah.
It's strategic, and I think for me, the original question that was asked there regarding relocation, it has to be. It's the only thing that can be considered is it has to stay in the city centre, because that is what Newcastle United is. It is the city, and whether it's at Gosforth, whether it's up next to the airport, whether it's where the training ground is currently, whether it's out in Northumberland, whether it's at even at the down the quay where the Metro Arena is, or whatever it's called now, it's not the same. And if you had a wish, I think every fan would say St James would be the ideal thing. They'd be able to create a super stadium there, but we know we can't. So instead of wanting something and knowing that you can't get it and then complaining when you don't get what you want, knowing that you couldn't get it in the first place, you've got to look at the next best options. And to steal one of Mitch's well-coined phrases, these owners will build a shiny brand new stadium that'll make us all proud. And you don't really hear Man City fans harking on for Main Road. You don't hear the Osula fans banging on about Highbury because they've got a successful team. And if that means we go to a stadium, and I still think 65 to 70,000 maximum is all we need. And when I see people saying 80,000, 100,000, the conurbation of Tyneside isn't enough. You need 1 in 10 people or something to go to the game. And that's not going to happen. It doesn't happen anywhere else in Europe. Why would it happen to us? And yes, we are better supporters, as we keep telling ourselves. But these same supporters, I don't want to be critical of the fan base in general, because we do have, and I do believe we've got the best fans in the league. There's teams like us and Leeds, and the 30,000 Man City fans that went through thick and thin. Even the Mackhams, there's a proper hardcore fan base. But if you had to ask someone, do you want a successful team, meaning that you're playing at Leazes Park, or do you want to just never really be in the conversation of winning silverware regularly by staying at St James, then I think most people would go for the former rather than the latter. But also, remember, it's the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund that owns us, and they're not doing it for charity, they're doing it to make money. And if they can get, say 65,000, and they've got 5,000 to 7,000 corporate people coming in every week, that's like having an 80,000 seat stadium anyway, revenue-wise. And it'll also allow a new generation of fans, because when Newcastle are doing well, people can't get in the ground. And that's an issue. There's a generation of kids that are waiting to get in, and they'll eventually get, I nearly swore there, let's say frustrated, and they'll spend the money elsewhere. They'll divert their attention elsewhere, because going to the watch Newcastle is not a viable option as it was for their father or their father before them. And even though it's in the blood, they'll support Newcastle. The money gets spent elsewhere, and they get into other hobbies, or dare I say habits. So you're in a position where we need a new generation, and I don't think people with season tickets are going to give them up anytime soon, and neither they should. So how do you get these new people in? And for me, I think there's about 35,000 season tickets. That's how many we've got. If we can add another 20,000 on top of that, that would be enough. That would be enough. And then you've got like the day by days, but you'll also get schools in, you can get kids in, you can get families in, you'll get more corporate, and all the boxes are ticked. But when you've got a stadium that is going to be the envy, and it will be the envy of, like that, how people are talking about Tottenham Stadium now, it's state of the art and it's fantastic, it's magnificent. Trust me, they'll build a better one than that. And they will. And even if it's by one more seat. And I seen something on Twitter during the week, and sorry I can't name check the person who said it, but if you go back to our record crowd, I believe was against Chelsea, wouldn't it be nice if they built the stadium to be 1 or 2 seats more than that? So we're breaking records with the best stadium in Europe. So they look at the record attendance, I think it was 68 or 69,000, just have 1 or 2 seats more than that. Just like how petty Tottenham were, they got their stadium a few hundred seats more than Arsenal's to say they were the biggest in London. Let us be record breakers in the right way. And instead of copying other people, let's tread our own path and be pioneers and say, right, but it is imperative that it stays in the city because anything else just wouldn't fit. So that's the conundrum, Steve. That's the debate. If it's Leazes Park, I think the vast majority of fans will support it. And as long as St James stays where it is until then, and there's easy wins, they can give the green belt back or they make it a park area where the current ground is. There's so much that can be done that I'd be surprised if it hasn't already been discussed. Just because it hasn't been disclosed doesn't mean it hasn't been discussed. And I think for me that is the answer. And the way they've give little sound bites out and little snippets here and there and everywhere, I think it's to, over the last 3 years, it's to get the general consensus of the vast majority of fans on board, where it becomes a necessity rather than a choice. And if it's been forced on us, let's make it a positive where it's been our decision. We've went and done that. St James will always be there. Whatever's there, you'll have to walk past it. Most of us will have to walk past it to get the ground anyway. But in my lifetime, I've never seen us win anything there, games, but trophies-wise. So, sorry, I lie. I was at the Cellar Cup last year. But I'm on about anything of real Anglo-Italian, whatever it is. But we need to progress. And if you stand still, you go backwards. We know that. So we have to go forward. And if the city council are the ones that are holding the cards, we're holding the money, and you can buy the cards. And they need the cash input more than we need that stadium, because they could take us somewhere else. You know, there is many sites, even in Gateshead, but I don't think that would ever be wholly accepted by the fan base. So for me, the obvious and inevitable answer is Leazes Park is where the new stadium will be. And once they've cut through all the red tape that needs to cut through, once all the promises and agreements have been done, what's going to happen with land, etc. Because mate Darren, who you know, Mitch, he's been telling me for years Leazes Park's full of rats. And I don't mean Bruno Fernandes, I mean actual rats, where I can't remember the last time I was in Leazes Park. And I'm sure there's many people watching this don't go to Leazes Park and think, oh, this is wonderful. But I know there'll still be people saying it's green, it's fantastic, and we shouldn't give it away. But to me, a bit of grass and trees, as important as they are, if you move that down a few hundred yards down the road to where the current ground is, it's still grass and trees. But that club is the heartbeat of the city. And if this improves our club, then we'll just swap them over. I know it sounds simple, just swap them over, because it's going to cost hundreds of millions of pounds. But at the moment, we've got owners who are willing to write that check. Remember, a once-in-a-generation check. Let's not mess it up by doing a lopsided stadium, because trust me, as I keep repeating, they're in for business. They're not going to spend £1 billion on 10,000 extra seats in St James, where you're still going to have the same people. You can have a reset. And do you know what? I think the atmosphere could be even better. And I know we've talked about this before, Steve, but you go to the game, I know you go with your dad and your brother, but there's other people who we know. If you look at John Allen, you look at Keith Patterson, etc., they'll get tickets where they can. You look at the Heed, you look at Steve Hasty. If you could get where people go together in a group, like you used to, Mitch, there used to be 10 years ago in the 1892. If you could get, then when you sit with people you know, or standing with people you know, you're more confident to express yourself and to sing and get behind the team. But if you're a once in a blue moon, but you're an opportunist visitor because you can't get the tickets, you're scared if you're sitting in your friend's ticket to say something wrong or to stand up in case you complain because it has a adverse effect on that person's ticket. If you're in a group with your own people and then they can reset the whole stadium, you want to go in your groups, great. We're going to have families there. We'll call them the tourist supporters, as in the new supporters, as in the people from the Middle East, the people from the Far East. They can have 100 seats every week for the Bulgarian fans club or the Dubai Mags or the Danish Mags or Magnus's lot from Iceland. You know, they can fit everything, and the atmosphere, I believe, would be better. But it's imperative it stays in the city.
Yeah, Lee Jones, we did talk about this on Friday, quite in depth, and we just said, look, be wary of misinformation, and I'm not saying it's intentionally coming from people, but it's a be very careful. I say when you're on YouTube, and I will reiterate this again, not to give misinformation. Try your best to give an opinion. If you've heard something, be very careful what you say. We don't plan or discuss this show before we come on air, but what we do is, we make sure that we discuss things before we come on in WhatsApp week in, week out, and if we see each other face to face, and we ultimately just always maintain this this plan of just giving an opinion, not of misleading anybody. And we've tried to do that since the takeover, and we'll continue to do it. So when a podcaster comes up with a theory, that's what it is. It's a theory. It's not a fact. And that really, that you just take that into consideration. I'm not going to dwell on it because I did have a bit of a rant on Friday, but we will move on.
Steve, you know the WhatsApp group that we've got with Steve here, Steve, the four of us.
Yeah.
Imagine just putting that on the screen over a week.
Well, that's what some people.
Information that we get. We're generally very careful about what we say.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the point I'm trying to make. There's one thing doing research and going out and coming out with clear, cold, hard facts, but to sensationalize stuff and to put stuff onto a channel, and to state things as fact is dangerous, and especially when we've seen examples of other YouTube channels do this and have their pants pulled down, and it's been fake news. So just be wary of what you pick up from YouTube, and be wary of what you pick up from social media. What I would always say is, if somebody is going to put it out into a newspaper and it's going to go online, it will have a little bit more credibility, because legally they have to have a leg to stand on. The solicitors have to check it, etc. And that's not going on YouTube. That's not going on a fan's channel. So yeah, again, I'm just reiterating that point to those who constantly put stuff in the chat and say, oh, this YouTuber said this and this YouTuber said that. We rely on our own information. We don't really have time to look at the other YouTube channels. But Freddie used to say, buyer beware. Freddie Shepherd used to say, buyer beware. When selling something. Well, I will say, reader beware, or listener beware. That's what I would say. James says, read online this week that both ourselves and Roma from next season will be part of the Adidas elite clubs. I thought this was happening this season. Do the guys have any info on this? I mean, this is your kind of avenue, this, Mitch. Adidas strips, etc.
The way I've had it explained to me is that when you're elevated into the Adidas elite club group, it's also dependent on sales. So there's almost like a 1A and a 1B. And the 1B contains some interesting teams from around the world. If you look at sort of the originals type range of clubs that have, like, for example, I think it's Austin FC, you've got like Sambas and some of the OG stuff available, but they're not classed as 1A, they're classed as 1B. And so you go into 1B, and then when you prove you can do the sales, which obviously it's taken us half of one season to do that, you then get elevated into the 1A, which is the true elite lot. That's the way I've had it explained to me. There's clubs around the world that you might not have heard of, or if you heard of vaguely, are classed as 1B. So Al Ahly in Egypt, for example, are 1B, like us. But they'll never do the sales that we'll do. Roma have been 1B, but I think they've done hit their sales targets this year, so they'll get elevated. Which is why there was discussion about, did we get the trefoil on the third shirt straight away? And I think some of the other 1B clubs kicked off about that. Because I think everybody knew we'd hit the sales. I think without a doubt, on historic Adidas sales, we were always going to hit certain marks. But I think you've got to do it to prove it. So I think that's where that's come from. That's from my contacts over here in Adidas.
All right.
Because it's interesting how the stuff that was released a couple of weeks ago into the club shop, we've had available on sites over here for the last 2 weeks. So Namshi, which is a fashion site which is connected to Noon, you've been able to buy a lot of the original stuff on Namshi for the last 3 weeks. But it was before it was released in the club shop back in Newcastle, bizarrely. So it shows how they're not terribly coordinated worldwide. They're not as joined up as you might think. So that's how I was led to believe it worked. There's an elite club group, but there's like a 1A and a 1B, and to prove to get into 1A, you've got to do the numbers.
Okay. Gary saying, do we think the club are using Luke Edwards to feed information to the fan base to get in the mood? Listen, Gary, I won't put that to the lads. What I will say though, Gary, is that journalists are like swings and roundabouts. Sometimes you're in favour, sometimes you're not in favour. And sometimes you've got a great relationship with the manager and the owner. Sometimes you haven't got a great relationship with the manager and the owner. And I think the best way to do it is when you listen to some of these journalists who are now doing podcasts, you will know which is which. So I will leave it at that, Gary. We'll leave it to your imagination. But it doesn't take a genius to work out who is talking to the owners and who is talking to the manager, put it that way. And now that we see Eddie's reaction when he speaks to various people in the press conference, I think we can also see who he entertains and who he doesn't entertain. But yeah, for example, Luke Edwards was best friends with Steve Bruce. I think that's been well publicized on this channel. Various other people weren't good friends with Steve Bruce. But, that's just an example. Moving on. Other questions before we come towards the end of the show. Got about 10 minutes left. It was a quick one for Dr. Neil. Mitch, how long do you think it takes to recover from a broken toe and a dodgy back? I mean, the fact you're a dentist, mate, I'm not sure this is your specialised area, but I think you'd be able to give an opinion.
Wrong end of the body, but I'll have a go. Broken toes you can do not a lot with. You just take them to the next digit along and let them heal. Whether you're able to play through that pain or discomfort, well, to me, Isaac was obviously playing with a discomfort in his foot. He was taking his feet out of the challenges and didn't look comfortable at all when he was playing, if you ask me. So it depends which toe, how bad a break. There's a number of factors. The back thing with Wilson, I still think that back injury or that back operation is connected to some of the hamstring injuries he gets. And I think to see when we do get him back, some of those soft tissue injuries round about the groin and hamstring might hopefully reduce. However, he seems to be taking forever to come back from this operation, which I find quite bizarre. But the lad seems to be made of licorice and marshmallow and held together with bits of butter. How long's a piece of string when it comes to recovery with Callum, unfortunately. But it's frustrating. Our return to play times do seem to be longer than many other people's.
Yeah.
But equally, some of the injuries we've had in the last 2 seasons have been frankly bizarre.
Yeah,
Mitch,
it's a strange situation. Go on, Stu.
I'll revisit something that Mitch said a few months ago when Wilson was first taken out, and it seemed that our new guy was predominant in making sure he had this time operation to get treated, and it is a link. It's all linked. If it fixes his back, that might fix the ligaments, it might fix the hamstrings, etc. But the proof's going to be in the pudding, and how it comes out, they've given the very best chance to perform on a more consistent basis, and hopefully it's a success. But that's medical advice. What we don't want is him playing not at his best, where he's going to get injured straight away. If he comes back and he gets eased in 10 minutes here, 50 minutes there, and he's capable of going through 3 or 4 months through the winter, and that's because that's the worst time. The cold weather is the worst time for these injuries. But if he's capable of getting through that, we will be better for it. So if James Bunce has made these decisions and made the call, then it's on him. And I hope he gets it right, because I don't think there's a Newcastle fan who doesn't love Callum Wilson when he's banging the goals in, and his hard work and his endeavour and his willingness to ruck up centre halves and stuff like that. He's a different type of player to what Isak is, but they both know where the back of the goal is. So if we can't get him back for a prolonged period of time, then it's been worthwhile. Because as we said, points-wise, statistically, we've had a better start than we would have had it last season. So we do have a springboard, and if we've got people like him coming back, Isak coming back. We're talking about Bernali. That's the new name now for Bruno and Tonali. The Bernali bromance. I didn't even mean to do that. But they're getting better as the time goes on. Hall is getting better and more confident and more used to his position and what's expected of him. And he's only going to progress, as we've referenced earlier. We've got Botman coming back. We have plenty to look forward to. And we know that they will make the additions come January or into the summer. But I'm not going to make predictions. It costs us too much money on how much we're going to spend. But we will get better because it's a common goal of everyone associated with the club. And we can point fingers saying that should have happened then, that should have happened then. But what we all don't know is the real reasons why they didn't happen. And now it's become apparent that not to us, but to other clubs who are interested in negotiating with Newcastle United, we're not going to be taken for bugs. And you're not going to charge us Newcastle tax. And you're not going to kiss the arse off the top six and say, hey, look what we've done. We've hindered their progress. Well, that's why you're bottom of the league. And you've got a player who doesn't want to play and he's not playing well for you. But that's life and we'll get on with it. But with Callum Wilson, I'm really, really looking forward to him because whenever he comes back, he's always got a point to prove. He seems to have that mist between his eyes, but control. Yeah. You know, and we know he can finish.
He's got a great scoring record. I mean, you know,
almost. Absolutely. Steve, and if he's fit and he's getting 20 minutes here and he's resting Isak, or he's start the odd game, and I know Eddie have referenced this as well, where they battle off each other. I think it's quite clear that Isak's the number one, but not many teams will have a better number two than a fit Callum Wilson, and that's what we've got to hope it stays that way.
I mean, you know, him coming back, whether it's the back end of this year, you know, for that next set of games. I mean, talk of potentially Isak and Wilson not being fit until, you know, a little bit after the international break. Whether that's true or not, Eddie Howe mentioned something like that in the press conference. But, you know, he's obviously been very, very careful with regards to what he's saying with regards to them. But yeah, he could be the difference between Europe and not getting Europe. Callum Wilson, what a way to potentially sign off his Newcastle career. Although, you know, I have heard interviews where Eddie's talked about potentially offering him, Longstaff, Burns, Shaw a new contract, you know. So it may well not be the end for Wilson. But no, it is a different. Did you see that?
Just laughing at Blue Rhythm Boy there. He's been watching all episodes. For 2 weeks, he hasn't been on the screen, right? And he's just said he doesn't know if it's his feed that he can't see it. Remember that story I saw on Fideovich?
Yeah.
But my mate who had been smoking something he shouldn't, and he started crying because he was watching a movie and he thought he was deaf. He just had the film on mute all the day. So
he did watch you.
He's on there. He is on no screen.
He did watch you.
He was smoking something he shouldn't have been smoking for leisurely purposes. And he was watching a movie and he couldn't hear it. And he watched the whole movie and he couldn't hear it. And he thought he'd went deaf. But he didn't realise till the next morning he'd accidentally put his TV on mute.
He did watch you.
Good on you.
Yay! It's a classic.
You did get us there. Fair play, yeah.
It's all about timing.
It is.
Chippers says, what do the lads think of how still having two goalkeepers on the bench? Brighton have won. The leapfrog Newcastle 3-2 final score. What a comeback that was, by the way. So they go above us on goal difference. But yeah, two goalkeepers on the bench. I mean, it is a strange situation, isn't it, really? I know Dubravka was obviously injured, bruised to the knee. He'll be back. But why do you think we had both of them on the bench?
It's a message.
Is it because they're in the 25-man squad and we haven't got anybody else? Yeah,
it's a message. It's that simple.
This is what I have
relating to the question that went across the bottom about do I know Paul Cowie? Yes, I used to teach with him. I think he's got a or he did have a practice, I think, on Welbeck Road in Walker, if I remember rightly. Nice guy. Used to teach with him myself when I was teaching at the dental hospital as well.
Okay. Is it as simple as that, Stu? Is it a message?
Definitely. He's saying this is what I have to do, and it's a clever message because we can only make 5 substitutions anyway. But at the same time, if we want to start being pickety, could we have used Zanussi off the bench? Could he have made a difference on one of the wings for 10, 15 minutes? I don't know, but like I say, Eddie Howe knows what he's doing, and he's one shrewd operator, and he's got a lot more intelligence than what some people give him credit for. So that's him saying, look, this is what I've got to do. If you don't want 2 goalkeepers on my bench, you fill my bench with quality, because I'm not going to put journeyman on my bench. Saying that like he brought a couple of them on, so contradicted myself a little bit there, but it was a message. It was a message to say this is all I have.
Back tomorrow, 6 o'clock. It'll be pre-recorded for the fans forum. Usual set of shows this week. I think Geordie's here. Geordie's there. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll have a few things to talk about as well on Wednesday night. But yeah, usual planning. Slightly different times. So keep an eye on the times if you set a reminder. But thanks as always to you for watching. 830 of you watching live, 500 of you on Twitter tonight. So please jump onto YouTube, search NUFC Matters, subscribe. We do 7 shows a week. Thanks to Stu. Thanks to Mitch. Take care, lads. See you soon.
Have a good evening,
Cheers, everyone.